Well, good evening. It is Wednesday night. It is 9 o'clock. I am excited to be here and I am waiting for my friends to join me, and I'm very excited tonight. I wanted to tell you while I'm waiting about a few things that have been going on recently. Um, Something that I have been reading recently is a book called um, it's a book called When the Body Says No. Actually, I haven't been reading it, but I have been listening to it um, out loud when I'm cleaning the house or when I've been driving. I was just driving to Atlanta, and many, many, many years ago, I'll get to the point of food addiction in a little bit, but this is relevant-ish. Many, many years ago, when I was still doing sales, and for those of you who know me, I sold World Book Encyclopedias door to door, which, by the way, was a very good training ground for psychology, truly. Anyway, I would listen to a lot of sales training books on tape, which was really a lot about positive psychology. And I learned a lot about life and about thinking and positive thinking and attitude way back before I went to school to be a psychologist. But I also was truly fascinated with this science field called psychoneuroimmunology, which basically means our illnesses, our physical illnesses, are very much impacted by our emotions, our thoughts, our early life experiences, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I love this guy named Gabor Mate. I call him Gabermate because I think it sounds more fun. And I really don't know how to say his name correctly, but he's a French-Canadian I think he's a psychiatrist. I was recently told he's not. Anyway, he's an MD. But he is very well versed in addiction. And I love listening to anything that he has to say because I agree with much of what he has to say. So I got this book called When the Body Says No. And this book is really a lot about how our bodies will develop illness based on how we've handled emotions through our lives. And one of the things that he is saying, and there's a lot of research in this, it's not just a theory, there's a lot of science. And oh yes, thank you, Marta, for putting that up there. You are on it, girlfriend. So this book is scientific research, talks about so many cancers and so many autoimmune illnesses, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, ALS, a lot of these diseases, when they've studied the lives of the people who get these diseases, huge percentages of these people had trouble saying no or expressing their anger throughout their lives, especially learned in childhood. So, of course, I'm thinking, wow, this relates to obesity, this relates to food addiction, this relates to addiction in general. And many months ago, I recommended another book to a client, and the name of that book is Anatomy of the Spirit, which is a very similar kind of book. It's a book by a woman named Carolyn Meese, who actually is a medical psychic, a medical intuitive. Anyway, it's also filled with a lot of scientific research about how our bodies will come out with illnesses that represent our emotional hurts in life. Fantastic, amazing, really interesting. So right before I logged on here tonight, I'm like, oh, it's only 8:55. I've got a few minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read on my phone. I have my daily readings, and I have two books that are Hazelden. Hazelden is a treatment recovery center in Minneapolis, and they publish a lot of these daily books. So I go on my daily book, and I post a lot of these things in my Facebook a lot. Anyway, this is from the book that I post from a lot, which is Each Day a New Beginning. So literally, it's January 10th, and here's what it says. Okay, so they always have a little quote at the beginning. It says, a complete reevaluation takes place in your physical and mental being when you've laughed and had some fun. So that's their little quote. Check this out. Norman Cousins, I guess, who is an author, in his book, Anatomy of an Illness. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I've just been talking to my client today about the book Anatomy of the Spirit because he started reading it and he's talking about how fascinating it is. I'm listening to the book When the Body Says No, and I open this up and it says, in his book Anatomy of an Illness. So there is totally something going on in my energy field or in my life or in my spirit world, whatever it is, that's like, okay, you got to be talking about this. So I hired an intern, a student, and she's doing some research for me. She's getting me articles. And so I sent her tonight, I want to do a talk at like ASMBS or Obesity Week or some of these different conferences about psychoneuroimmunology. In other words, how our lives and our emotional expression, our ability to say no, our willingness and ability to be our authentic selves, use our true voices, has had an impact on our obesity, our diseases of obesity and or our diseases of food addiction. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. So all that to say, I know from having done over 5,000 bariatric pre-surgical evaluations that a lot of people who struggle with the disease of obesity, and a portion of that population also struggles from the disease of food addiction, as do I, as well as other addictions, have childhoods in which we were unable to use our voices, right? If there was sexual abuse, who did you tell? Maybe nobody. If you did tell somebody, did they listen? You know, and interestingly, in the book that I was listening to today, he was talking about the exact case of childhood sexual abuse, which, by the way, 60% of those who suffer with obesity have been sexually abused as children. So this is very relevant, right? Not telling somebody about sexual abuse as a child is a way for the child to protect the adult. They want to protect the adult. And that, my friends, is not the job of a child. The job of the child is to say, I need you to help me. This happened to me. The parent's job, on the other hand, is to get help for the child or to help protect the child. Anyway, so all of that to say, this is so fascinating. Tonight we're going to talk more about food addiction, the disease of food addiction, and we're going to talk about motivation. And I literally just finished writing up a blog for the bariatric center that I work at, Live Healthy MD in Augusta. And the blog post is about this whole business of bariatric surgery and the lifestyle afterwards is about a lifestyle change. It's not about a diet, right? So I was thinking today about the lifestyle changes that go along with having bariatric surgery and how much more intensified or how much more difficult they are if you are also dealing with food addiction. Because let's face it, you know, a lot of people come from a long time of either being on a diet or having a diet mentality, which can be a way to avoid life, avoid feelings, avoid bad relationships, avoid dealing with family, friends, whatever. It can be a lot of things. But we want to get away from a diet mentality after bariatric surgery and focus on those lifestyle changes, improved health, a healthier diet, but not being on a diet, right? Meaning what you consume, what you put in your body. Now, if you also have the disease of food addiction on top of that, part of your lifestyle change, if you subscribe to this philosophy of food addiction, is abstinence, right? So not only do you have to make many lifestyle changes after bariatric surgery, if you're a food addict and you're going for abstinence, those lifestyle changes are even more difficult. I do believe that because, not only are you going for smaller portions, but you're cutting out whole categories of food, right? Which mean you're going to feel grumpy and you're going to go through withdrawals. And, it's difficult on top of difficult because you're dealing with two different diseases that have a lot of commonality in terms of their healing process and their recoveries. But there's an added layer when we're talking about food addiction and abstinence. So we're going to talk about motivation tonight, right? I want to talk about what motivation is, and I want to talk about how you maintain it. Now, you guys all know what motivation is, but we're just going to do a little lesson on motivation, and I'm sending out a worksheet tomorrow, and you should all get it. I don't know if this comes to you. I know it comes to you by email, but I don't know if it says MailChimp. We send it out through MailChimp. That's the delivery service that comes to you. But it's going to be a motivation workshop. We could have a workshop on motivation, right? It's going to be a motivation worksheet. So I want you to complete the worksheet. I want you to share the worksheet. Take it to your support groups. Share it with your friends. It doesn't even have to be necessarily related to your bariatric surgical process or your food addiction issues. But motivation is the reason you're doing this in the first place, right? So think for a minute. Some of you post online, what the heck are the reasons, reasons, plural, that if you had bariatric surgery, that you chose to have bariatric surgery? What are the reasons you chose to lose weight even if you didn't have weight loss surgery? What is your motivation? What started you down this journey? What was your motivation for looking into food addiction in addition to or concurrently with your disease of obesity? Why? It's the why. It's like, why am I doing this? Why did I start down this road? What am I looking for? What am I looking to gain? A lot of people get here from some disaster, right? Or you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. You're sick of the obsession. You're sick of the mental games. You're sick of the games you play with others. You're sick of the way your obesity and or your food addiction interferes with other areas of your life, with your relationships, with you, right? So maybe that's what got you here, but why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to keep it off, right? Sometimes we start with, why do we want to do it to begin with, which kind of takes us into the difference between internal and external motivation, right? But before we go there, and I'm kind of giving you some little hints for your homework, right? First of all, you got to figure out why you did this. What was your starting point? And I want to say that can change over time, right? As I've shared with you, a lot of times I went into treatment for my chemical addictions, my alcoholism, my drug of choice, which was codeine. I went into the treatment program because I feared losing my husband and my children. So that was my initial motivation. And you hear a lot of times, you've got to do this for yourself. You can't help somebody if they don't want help for themselves, right? Well, I wanted help for myself because I didn't want to lose my family. Now, that evolved over time to wanting this for myself. Because like we talked about last week, when we talked about the many roads to Rome and all of these different programs, 12-step or non-12-step, talk about how much more improved your lifestyle is and your way of life and your interactions and your relationships when you are healing from addictions, right? So initially, I was so afraid of losing my family that was my motivation. But as I got into abstinence and understanding the bigger picture, that healing from addictions and recovery involves your whole world, not just my marriage and my family, but primarily my relationship with myself. that my motivation kind of expanded. I'm not going to say it completely changed, but the primary focus initially was my fear of losing my family, but that evolved into wanting to understand who I am, wanting to get to that authentic self, wanting to put into practice these tools and skills and opportunities and life, living life more fully. That happened when my world was not encased by, caged in by, shut off by, made small by living in my world of addiction. So, your motivation may be different today than it was initially, and it may evolve as time goes on and you get more and more entrenched into the process of recovery. So, the reasons that you started. Now, we're going to talk about those at the very end again because they're essential to keep in the forefront of your life, right? So, our motivations can come from different sources. If you chose to have bariatric surgery, for a lot of people, the motivation initially is, if I don't have this surgery, my diabetes is going to kill me, my kidneys are going to fail, and my systems are going to shut down, and that's going to kill me. My blood pressure is going to kill me. I'm going to have a stroke. It may be imminent health issues. That may be your primary motivation to begin with. Now, that's not going to be enough to sustain you to keep up with the lifestyle changes in the long run, because when your health improves, then you might be going, I got this, and that's where we get back into trouble. So that motivation may be what got you there, and that's a biological motivation, right? There are social motivations. It's like, oh my gosh, a lot of people, you've heard this, maybe you did this, lose weight to fit into their wedding dress, or lose weight to look good when you go to your class reunion, right? That's pretty standard, classic kind of thing. So it may be a social kind of motivation to begin with. But as most of you who had that kind of motivation as your only motivation have found out, that's not going to sustain you. So once the class reunion is over or the wedding is over, you kind of go back to those nasty old habits, or your addiction resumes the major priority in your life, right? So those are examples of social motivators. Emotional motivators can also play a role, and it can be some of this, some of that. It's not just this or just that or just this. But for me, the emotion of fear was huge when I initially got into the healing process from my addiction. It was fear, like I said, of losing my family. So that was an emotional motivator. So when you get this workshop, I want you to spend some time looking at those different categories of motivators, the biological motivators, the emotional motivators, the social motivators. They're not right or wrong, any of them. Some of them will sustain you longer than others, and you will add some as you go, as you're like, okay, I've got that healthy weight, but I don't want to lose it. So what else is important to me? It's kind of like those meaningful matters we talked about, right? So let's talk for a minute about external motivators versus internal motivators. Clearly, external motivators are things that are outside of yourself. So my family was clearly outside of myself. I wanted to hold on to them. A wedding dress or a class reunion, those are external motivators. It's like, I got a goal, I'm going to get there, and then who knows. But those are external motivators. And external motivators can be really powerful. But the thing about them is they're good for short term. Most of the time, an external motivator isn't going to keep you consistently putting forth the amount of effort. There's that word that I love so much. It's, you're going to put forth, you're going to get to that gym, you're going to cut back on the carbs, you're going to count those calories, you're going to, check in with friends, you're going to join a walking group, whatever it is. The wedding's over and it's like, okay, I'm done. So an external motivator, while can be impressive, is not going to stick with you for the long term. That's why if I hadn't evolved, if I hadn't bolstered or come to the realization that so much of this healing process was about me. In addition to wanting to keep my family, I wanted to get to know me. I wanted to find out, what's my purpose in life? What are my strengths? How can I use those strengths? What are the things I'm not so good at? Maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree and putting my efforts in a place that's going to lead to nothing but frustration. Who am I? Who do I want to be? And you know what? A bonus of that, I guess, is even if my family, for whatever reason, if my husband decided he didn't want to be married to me anymore somewhere along that journey, or, obviously my children have grown and made their own lives, and maybe they had moved away, or maybe they're just like, you know what, Mom, I need a break from you, whatever it is, right? If they had been my only motivation and then something happened and I didn't have me, I didn't believe that I was worth the journey and the effort and the commitment, it would all cave, right? So if at some point along the way, part of that motivation doesn't come from inside yourself, then it's going to be really difficult to maintain and sustain those lifestyle changes that you have to make to stay in the healing process from addiction, to stay in recovery, to really experience all that your life has to offer you so that you can live your life to the fullest. You can find out what your gifts, your talents, your purposes, your reasons for being here are, so that you can learn to say, no, I can't do that. This is what I believe. I respect what you believe. I understand that that's something that's important to you and you want to do that, but that's not what's nearest and dearest to my heart, and I have to be true to me. Not that I'm going to be completely selfish and not think of other people and blah, 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 but I have to remain true to me in order to sustain and stay on this healing path, because I matter. That's why all of last year I harped on, you've got to heal that relationship with yourself. Because if you're out there, being support to other people and encouraging other people and reminding them that they are worth this, and you're having compassion for their struggles, but you're not affording yourself, you're not granting yourself those same gifts and allowances, then you're not going to sustain the effort for you. All right? So that's why I focus so much on healing the relationship with yourself, because it's got to be internally motivated. Some of the motivation has to be for you. So in this blog that I did tonight about the lifestyle change, right, and not dieting, part of the addiction mentality with food is, we always want to control that addiction. We want to have control over it, right? When a lot of it is about letting go of the control so that you can gain control, which is one of the things I struggled so long with, trying to understand. You have to give up control to maintain control. In other words, I have to quit trying to hold on so tightly. And when I quit trying to hold on so tightly and just do what I'm supposed to do, I end up having the control I'm seeking. More on that later. But one of the things that I struggle with post-ops or people in recovery from addiction is addiction from food is staying on a diet, right? So what they asked me to blog about was blogging about how to move from focusing on being on a diet to having a lifestyle, a healthy diet as a lifestyle. So most people, when they think of diet, they think of Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, vegan, low carb, very low carb, those sorts of things, a diet, right? Well, we're looking for positive changes all around the lifestyle. So when it comes to food addiction, a diet keeps you closed in, right? Because you're focusing on calories and numbers and, recipes and all that stuff that makes you crazy. Let it go. It's a lifestyle. It's not a diet, right? So the additional piece for food addiction is the abstinence. You don't have to go crazy like this. You just cross it off and it's not an option. So when you're choosing your healthy diet lifestyle, you have more limited options than if you don't have an addiction to food. But, okay, so we're not talking about a diet. We're talking about a healthy diet to go along with your healthy behaviors, including exercise, including learning healthy coping skills, including learning to have a more positive attitude, including learning to set some boundaries, including the whole way of life, because that frees you up to live life fully, right? The other thing that makes me sad and frustrated when I hear post-ops or people who struggle with food addiction, when I hear them talking about being on a diet, I'm like, oh, you're doing what you did before you attempted recovery or healing from addiction, before you had weight loss surgery, which is avoiding life through that diet, or maybe maintaining your addiction in a different way, or maybe trying to maintain that false sense of control, the way, having your hands all over when we want to get our hands off of it, or whatever being on a diet does for you. What purpose does it serve? Maybe you don't have friends if you're not on a diet, because everybody who are your friends are your diet buddies. Or maybe you don't know how to relate to a family member because all you know how to do is diet together. So this business of healing includes far more than being abstinent from certain foods. So being on a diet is not the healthiest way for the majority of people to live. So how do you develop that lifestyle of healthy diet, lifestyle of healthy exercise, lifestyle of healthy activity, lifestyle of healthy thinking? Well, of course, you have many roads to Rome, right? Part of which may be a 12-step program, part of which may be smart recovery, part of which may be the support groups that you belong to, and hopefully part of which are the 4 ACEs. So you got to become aware, right? You got to know the difference between being on a diet and the lifestyle changes. You have to know the difference between control and giving up control to gain control. You need to be aware of the difference between, let's see, I already said diet versus healthy diet in terms of what you get or what you eat, right? So you have to become aware of those things. You have to become aware of what your motivations are, and you have to become aware as they evolve, right? Acceptance. The 4 ACEs. The next A is you got to realize that if this is something you want for the rest of your life, you've got to have more than just those sometimes initial external motivations, right? You have to become aware that you might need to ask for help. You might need to become aware that this is more, that healing from addiction is so much more than getting through that initial abstinence, that initial withdrawal. It's a whole lot more than that. You have to become accountable. So part of the healthy lifestyle changes may be keeping a food diary, may be keeping an exercise journal. It may be going to the support group even though you don't want to. It may be reaching out and asking somebody for help, right? Taking healthy risks. So you got to be accountable. You have to be willing to take those steps. And that's about attitude, that willingness. Well, I don't like to ask for help. Well, do you want to be well or do you want to stay sick? So feel the fear, do it anyway. The same client that I was working with today, who's reading the book about anatomy of the spirit. Clearly, I use a lot of recovery slogans in my therapy work with people, like if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. If 10 people tell you you have a tail, you might want to turn around and take a look. You know, I just use a lot of the recovery slogans that I have learned over the however many years, I can't even remember right now, that I've been in recovery, like 30, it was 89, whatever that was. I'm very grateful. So I use these in my therapy work. And so he says to me today, and he's not involved in any 12-step programs, but he said to me today, he's in management and he says a lot of these things now in his management practice of his people. You know, they've just kind of become a way of speaking with him as well. And so he said he's had, on several occasions, he's had people come up to him and ask what meetings he goes to, because they recognize the language. I mean, this is recovery speak. This is recovery language. And he's not in any 12-step, but that's because recovery is about a way of life, right? And you benefit in so many ways. Okay, so attitude. If you got an attitude problem, then you need to get some help for it, right? Maybe you need to make yourself a note. Maybe you need to talk out loud to your bad attitude and say, this isn't going to get me where I want to be. Read some positive quotes. Read some positive books. Immerse yourself in some good literature. Or laugh. All right, commitment. You have to make a commitment, and you can't just make the commitment when you start out on the journey. You got to recommit to this several times a day sometimes, right? So you put your feet on the floor and I'm committed to the healing process and making my life the best it can possibly be. And you have to do the effort, because without the effort, if you always do what you always do, you always get what you always got, right? And if you do nothing, you'll get nothing. So if nothing changes, nothing changes. So you got to put forth that effort to get the results. And remember that your self matters just as much as somebody else's self matters. And as much as you care for others, you got to care for yourself. So these are some ways to help maintain that lifestyle. So back to this motivation. Here's the deal. You got to post these things where you can use them. Somebody responded to something on one of my Facebook posts and said that she makes herself a message on her phone. I so love that. Love it, love it, love it, because then she sees it every time she goes to use her phone. You know, sticky notes on your computer, sticky notes on your face, I don't care, right on your mirror, whatever you got to do to keep this front and center. Immersion, 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 right? Immerse yourself in the recovery work. And 9:30. So we're about done for tonight. Now let's see, what things do I want to tell you? I'm excited. I submitted some abstracts for some different conferences. I'm really excited about that. There are 2 that are coming up in the fairly near future. Well, I guess they just all come quickly. The Southeast, it was Southeast VSG. I think it's Southeast Bariatric Conference. It's going to be in Orlando. Look it up online. Look it up on Facebook. It's Robin Washington who's coordinating it. It's a great conference. I'm going to be there. We're going to have lots of fun. Dawn's going to be there. Dawn Hurlebus, who I do coffee and tea with Dawn. She is the owner of Slim Pressions, which are the garments that we all need to have, whether we've had weight loss surgery or not, right? Age takes its toll. It's just a thing. Laura Preston, I think, is going to be in Orlando. So get yourselves down there. It's a great conference. The WLSFA, Weight Loss Surgery Foundation of America, which is Laura Van Tile, who's another good friend of mine and works tirelessly in this community. And that is going to be in San Antonio. So that's coming up. OAC, Your Weight Matters Conference isn't too far off in the distance. And that's, I think, in Denver. Oh my gosh, there's just so many awesome conferences. Save your pennies and go to these things, okay? And I'm going to be doing some retreats, some 8-person intensive. They'll be Thursday through Sunday, and people are going to work and learn and grow and connect and learn to love yourself more. It's just going to be an amazing year. So onward and forward. Keep sharing with one another. Keep, supporting one another, encouraging each other. But by God, do it with and for yourself too. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me tonight. Share this. Share you. I'm grateful. I'm filled with gratitude tonight. Just joyful with gratitude tonight. So thanks for sharing your time with me. Your health, your responsibility this day, every day, and you're doing it. You're taking care of it by being here tonight. All right, I will talk with you soon. Take care. Bye.